You're listening to an audio edition of Upon Further Examination at kielharvey.substack.com. This is What is Climbing For? Why you can reach the highest peaks and still arrive with nothing. Written and narrated by me, Kiel Harvey. In 1987, 3 months into an Everest expedition, Ed Viesturs turned around about 300 feet below the summit. He and his partner had run out of rope and a storm was building, and 300 feet of the most famous mountain on Earth sat right there above them. An afternoon's work, after months of climbing and planning and wanting, they went down instead. Viesturs would not stand on top of Everest until 1990, on his third attempt, and he did it without bottled oxygen. He summited Everest 6 times and climbed all 14 of the world's highest peaks. By most accounts, he is the most disciplined high-altitude climber this country has produced, and his whole reputation rests on one sentence. Getting to the top is optional. Getting down is mandatory. I think about that sentence almost more than anything anyone has told me about work. Up is the most natural direction in the world. It's also the one that kills people. On a mountain, the summit feels like the destination because it's the thing you can see and the thing you train for and the thing that gets the photograph. But the summit was never really the destination. Home was. The summit is the halfway point that happens to be the most seductive because reaching it feels so much like finishing that climbers forget they're only half done. They call it summit fever. You get close, the wanting takes over, and the part of your brain that was supposed to keep you alive goes quiet. The numbers are not subtle about how this ends. In one study of climbers who died high on Everest, above 8,000 meters, the majority died on the way down, after they had already reached the top, not on the brutal climb up, on the descent, out of fuel, having spent everything to reach a place they were never meant to stay. They got exactly what they came for, and it killed them. Because getting it was never the actual goal. Viesturs is famous for a boring reason. He set turnaround times. He decided in advance, in the calm, before the fever, what he would not trade to reach the top. So when he was 300 feet away and every cell in his body wanted to keep going, the decision was already made. He had picked the destination, and the destination was not the summit. It was the rest of his life. I have been careful about the mountains I picked. I want to be clear about that because the easy version of this essay is a confession that I chase titles I never stopped to think about, and that's not true. I chose my jobs on purpose. I turned things down. I was never the man who said yes to everything that pointed up. That's not where it got me. Where it got me was quieter and harder to see. The wanting of the next role, the higher one, did something to my judgment that had nothing to do with which mountain I climbed. It made me willing to trade. A little more time than I said I would give. A few things I had told myself were not negotiable, renegotiated, so slowly I never caught the moment. A sense, somewhere in the second or third climb, that I had lost track of where I was actually trying to end up and had started measuring myself by altitude alone. Higher than last year, higher than the people I started with. I never accepted a job I hadn't chosen. I just slowly stopped asking what the climbing was for. That is summit fever in a collared shirt. It does not announce itself. You never notice the moment the top stops being a means and becomes the whole point. You look up one day and realize you've been navigating by something that only feels like a direction. Here's the thing I had wrong for a long time. I kept treating higher as if it were a destination, and it's not. A destination is a place, somewhere you are getting nearer to or farther from. Higher is not a place. It's a comparison, and a comparison has no top. You can climb your whole life, and the honest answer to where are you headed never changes. Higher than before? That is exactly why summit fever can kill a man who already stood on the summit. He reached the only thing he was aiming at, and there was still nothing there. There's a moment in the movie Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps that names us better than any climbing metaphor. This young trader asks a man at the top of his game what his number is. The amount of money that would finally be enough, the figure where he would walk away satisfied. The answer is one word: more. It plays as a villain's line, but really it's just an honest one. When what you are chasing is a comparison, more is the only answer there is. None of this is an argument against climbing. Viesturs climbed. He climbed harder and higher than nearly anyone alive, and he is not sorry, and neither am I. Ambition is not the villain here. The mountain is real, and providing for the people you love by climbing it is a good and serious thing. People who sneer at ambition have usually never had anyone counting on them. The discipline is not to stop climbing. It's to know what you are climbing toward. And this is where I fooled myself for years because I thought I did know. I thought a mission was a destination on the org chart, a title, a number I would hit. But those are altitudes, every one of them. A mission is not the job I want to hold or the money I want to make. It's the kind of man I'm trying to become and the mark I'm trying to leave. And a title is at best a tool for that, and at worst, an excuse to never name it at all. For years, that is exactly what I did. I chased the next title and never decided what it was for. I gave everything to the climb without ever naming the place I was trying to reach, which is no way to climb a mountain, and honestly, a worse way to live. There's a line you start hearing from successful people in the last third of their career. It comes from the ones near the top of the ladder, the ones who by every visible measure made it. And it comes about the same way every time. I wish I'd worked less. I wish I'd been home more. The most famous version of it is not from the boardroom at all. A hospice nurse named Bronnie Ware spent years sitting with people in the last weeks of their lives, and when she wrote down what they told her, "I wished I hadn't worked so hard," was near the top of the list. She said it came from every male patient she nursed. Every one. Think about that. I used to hear that as a lesson, and now I actually think it's a misdiagnosis wearing the costume of wisdom. Here's what I think those men are actually saying. They climbed for 30 years by the only measure they ever set, which was higher, and they arrived at the top and felt the emptiness that was always going to be there waiting for them, because you never actually arrive at higher. Then, reaching for an explanation, they grabbed the nearest one available. It must have been the hours. I should have been home. Maybe that would have filled it. But they don't actually know that. They never ran the other experiment. I should have been home more as a guess about a life they didn't live, offered from inside the disappointment of the one they did. It's not the opposite of summit fever. It's summit fever a second time. The same unexamined reach for a default, except now the default is home instead of work. A platitude that asks nothing of you gives nothing back. I wish I'd worked less. I wish I had worked less asks only that you feel vaguely sorry. And I could be that man. That is the part I can't write from above. I'm close enough to the climb to know how the trade happens, slowly, with my own consent. I can see the version of me at 55 reciting that same line because I never did the harder thing, which was decide what the climbing was for before I found out by accident that it wasn't for anything in particular. Here's what the regret quietly assumes. That home and the climb are rivals, that they're mutually exclusive, and that the fix is to hand one side more of the hours. I don't think that is the fix. I think it's the same mistake in a kinder outfit. If the only question is how to divide the hours between work and home, you've already agreed that they are two different races and that you're just adjusting the split. A mission doesn't divide, it integrates. If I actually know the kind of man I'm trying to become and the mark I'm trying to leave, then my family is not the thing I protect from my work, and it's not the consolation prize I tell myself I should have chosen instead. It's part of the destination. The home and the work serve the same summit, or the summit was never real to begin with. The man who wishes he had worked less is still describing two separate ledgers and wishing he had moved entries between them. The balance of the ledgers was never the point. The point was that the climb and the home were supposed to be aimed at the same place the whole time. So I've started setting them. Not for a mountain, for a life. The whole point of a turnaround time is that you make the call while you're still thinking clearly. and then you honor it when you are not. So I try to name, in the calm, what the climbing is actually for, not the next rung. The kind of father my kids will describe when I'm not in the room. Work I am proud of for what it is, not for who it beat. The ordinary Wednesday, 5 years out, I would actually want to be living, with the work and the people and the faith all pointed the same way instead of fighting over the leftover hours. That is the destination. A turnaround time is just the promise that when the next role asks me to trade a piece of it away, I will have decided the answer before the wanting gets a vote. Sometimes the answer is still the climb, because the next rung points exactly where I said I wanted to end up. And then I should take it and not feel clever for having paused. But I want it to be a decision, measured around the destination instead of a current I drift in because everyone around me is pointed the same way and up is always conveniently available. Getting to the top is optional. Getting down is mandatory. Viesturs was not talking about quitting. He was talking about knowing, before the fever sets in, what are you climbing back down to, and refusing to trade it for the one thing that feels in the moment like it's worth everything. So that is the question I'm trying to answer while I can still think straight. A long way from the summit. Before I'm the man at the end of a successful career guessing at what went wrong. Not how high, not how to split the hours after I have already decided the work and the home are at war. Just this. What is the climbing for? Name it. And the next rung sorts itself up or down. Refuse to, and you can catch the exact top you aimed for and still arrive with nothing. Because higher is a comparison, not a destination, and too imprecise to build a life on. Pick what you are climbing for, then climb. Thank you for listening to this narrated edition of the article, What is Climbing For? Available on my Substack upon further examination at kielharvey.substack.com. My name is harder to spell than it sounds, so that's KIELHARVEY.substack.com. If you're like me, you've been told a million times that you should read your Bible. To my ears, that falls into the same camp as you should go to the gym. And here's what I've noticed about both. I'm way more consistent when I've got a close friend going through it with me. That's exactly what Rock Reader was built for. You pick a reading plan, connect with a few people you trust, and journal through it together, a day at a time. It's private by default, so nothing you write ever gets seen unless you decide to share it. And it's completely free. No subscription, no in-app purchases. You can download it at rockreader.com or in the Google Play Store. Grab a buddy and dig into the Word together every day. And if you're just getting started reading the Bible, or you've been a Christian a long time and your Bible's gotten a little dustier than you'd like, I put together a study workbook for you called From the Source. It's at kielharveybooks.com and on Amazon. You go at your own pace, and it teaches you how to read and study the Bible so you can understand it for yourself. This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.